On May 7th, Chongqing's police chief Zhang Anjiang jumped to his death. 2 months later, on July 15th, Sichuan's police chief Huang Rixue was found dead.
Their deaths are exactly what's shielding Wang Xiaohong from this investigation, buying him room to breathe. This is paying for a political firewall with human lives.
The Prince Group, founded by Fujian native Chen Ji, started in Cambodia, then expanded into Myanmar's Mayawati. He's accused of deep involvement in scam hubs like the KK Park compound.
Places like Southeast Asia's casinos and scam compounds, on the surface, just outlaws running wild beyond the border. But standing right behind them is China's own police system.
Huang Rixue, Zhang Anjiang, whether their deaths were personal choices or a political purge, suicide, or something made to look like it, dead men don't talk.
These local warlords already have guns, money, territory, and if these states within a state ever get secretly co-opted by some political faction inside China, that's no longer a matter of public order. It becomes a matter of security at the very core of power in Zhongnanhai. That's the real danger here.
Hello everyone, welcome back to PinnacleView. I'm Shi Shan. On May 7th, 2026, Chongqing's police chief Zhang Anjiang jumped to his death. 2 months later, on July 15th, Huang Rixue, the police chief of Sichuan province, died by her own hand as well. 2 provincial-level security chiefs dying unnatural deaths within such a short span of time. It shows the CCP's internal power struggle has entered a knives-out phase. But there's another side to this. These extraordinary back-to-back deaths may well be tied to actions the United States has been taking against Southeast Asia. And buried in all of it is a murky, sprawling scandal involving China's underworld and its official world alike. Today we're going to dig into part of that story. Joining us are senior media professional Ms. Guo and independent producer Li Jun. Okay, before we start the show, I want to take a moment to talk about our partner, Puritang's product. Puritang's Black Ginseng is currently running a special offer. Black ginseng is considered a prized wellness ingredient, and we've heard from quite a few customers about how well it's worked for them. One of them, a Chinese friend living in the US, had to rush back to China because his elderly mother's health had taken a serious turn for the worse. He brought back Puritang's Black Ginseng, made using the traditional 9 times steamed, 9 times sun-dried method for his mother to take. A few weeks later, her energy and stamina and her day-to-day activity had visibly improved. She's not only able to go out normally again, she can even take walks and get some exercise with him. Everyone in the family has been thrilled. There's another friend who'd gone through colon cancer surgery. His body was quite weak afterward, but after taking Puritang Black Ginseng regularly, his condition improved dramatically. His appetite and his overall energy got much better too. When friends saw him again, they said he looked completely different. His color was healthy, and he seemed full of life again. Nothing like right after the surgery. We hear feedback like this all the time, because once you reach a certain age, your body's vitality gets depleted, and that's exactly when you need genuinely top-grade black ginseng to reset things. It can make a real difference in how you feel overall. Here's the current offer. When you buy Puritang Black Ginseng products, enter the promo code JYLT at checkout. That's the initials of Jingying Lantan, our show's Chinese name. And you'll get free worldwide shipping. There are also gifts with purchase. Spend $500 and get a free root of black ginseng. Spend $3,000 or more and you'll get an extra premium grade root thrown in. This is a genuinely rare deal, and honestly, offers like this one don't come around very often. So if you've been thinking about trying it, now's a great time. On behalf of everyone on our team here at PinnacleView, I really want to thank all of you for your support. And of course, thanks to our partners as well, who've been a big help to us. Now, back to the show. Ms. Guo in Sichuan and in Chongqing, one a department head, one a bureau chief, both dead, both unnatural deaths. Now, you're telling me these are tied to the United States and to Southeast Asia. I'd guess a lot of our viewers are thinking the same thing I am, that this sounds hard to believe. So what exactly is the connection here? Can you give us the big picture, a rough sketch of how all this actually fits together?
To explain this, you have to start with an invisible network, places like Southeast Asia's casinos and scam compounds. On the surface, it looks like a bunch of outlaws running wild beyond China's borders. But behind them, standing in the shadows, is China's own police system. And this isn't something new from the last couple of years. This thread runs back a long way. Originally, it was about monitoring and infiltrating the Chinese gangs and underground casinos across Southeast Asia. Chinese police planted informants deep inside them. Over time, the line between informant and gangster blurred. Surveillance slowly turned into a stake in the business. The mole became a partner. And that's how this whole system, one foot in the underworld, one foot in officialdom, quietly grew up. The main pillars holding this whole structure up are the police departments of Chongqing, Sichuan, and Fuzhou. This falls under their so-called foreign affairs work. Then the pandemic hit and the industry went through an upgrade. These compounds used to run on pig butchering scams, something Chinese people know well, cheating other Chinese people out of their own hard-earned money, mostly targeting people back home. But during the pandemic, cross-border travel was cut off. So these gangs turned their knives on Americans and wealthy Westerners instead. Richer pickings, lower risk and easier to pull off because Westerners are simply far too trusting.
Especially Americans. Rather naive.
And so this sheep shearing scam just took off everywhere.
Sheep shearing then. I'm not pig butchering anymore. Now it's sheep.
And once the target shifted to foreigners, it spread everywhere. After years of investigating, the US formally moved to crack down starting in 2025. That's how we got the cases everyone's heard of and the Prince Group, the Huion Group, one big syndicate after another getting pulled up by the roots. And what these compounds do goes way beyond just cold calling people for money. They're running full-scale money laundering machines, using crypto to wash dirty cash through layer after layer. And the money flowing through this pipeline isn't just blood money from scam victims. There's also a huge amount of corrupt cash from senior CCP officials themselves, riding the same laundering pipeline clean. The numbers the US has published are staggering. The Prince Group alone was running roughly $20 billion a year, and there are thousands of scam compounds like it across Southeast Asia, with a massive impact on the international system.
So it turned into targeting foreigners specifically, and that's what triggered such a fierce American backlash. That's exactly the point you're making. This black market network isn't just about scam calls. There's a whole chain of other issues behind it. And if Beijing can't get a handle on it, this is going to be a massive blow to the party itself.
Chinese police stay in close contact with them because they're also fighting drugs, chasing narcotics, so they're all part of the same network. Originally, the police were just monitoring them, but slowly the profits got too big, and once AI came into the picture, this industry became truly uncontrollable.
Now it's deepfake technology being used everywhere. It can clone your voice. Once it has your data, once it knows your family situation, it can use your voice, even fake images of your friends and family. There's just one guy sitting there, and the moment he opens his mouth, out comes fluent English, an authentic American accent. And the face on screen is your loved one's face. This is genuinely terrifying next-level technology.
He can even do live video with all sorts of simulated faces and images. So this high-tech weapon hits America incredibly hard.
That reminds me, Xi Jinping just held that summit in Shanghai. The AI summit. You know which countries were at that AI summit? Myanmar, Cambodia, Laos, Thailand. Actually, I don't think Thailand was there. They were all in this AI summit. A lot of people say, what AI could those places possibly have? Wrong. These places have been using AI and using it very effectively for years now. So this whole black market network really does have some deep, deep ties running straight into the police system itself. A very real connection. Yes, it does.
Because it's hiding under the protective umbrella of China's own police system, outsiders simply can't see through it. But this time the Americans are bringing something different to the table. High-tech big data tracking and that dragnet of a hand called the US dollar clearing system. The moment dirty money passes through dollar settlement, it leaves a trace. And as they trace that money trail upward, evidence that Chinese police and even higher-ranking officials were laundering money through this Southeast Asian black market pipeline got pieced together bit by the American side. That's what's truly making Beijing's heart race. And what genuinely terrifies Zhong Nanhai is this. On June 16th, the US Congress formally designated the Chinese Communist Party a criminal organization. That didn't come out of nowhere. Right after, on June 24th, American media reported that US intelligence agencies and Secretary of State Rubio said he'd publish before the end of this year a list of overseas assets belonging to Xi Jinping's family and other Politburo Standing Committee members. You know why he'd dare say that? Because it's loaded with meaning. It means this scam laundering money trail could at any moment be laid side by side on the same table as the leadership's list of overseas wealth. And if the two match up, the party's whole serving the people facade gets shattered for good, a massive blow to the regime itself. That's exactly why this round of American maximum pressure worked instantly. The moment the news broke on June 25th, Xi immediately softened his stance. Cambodia's godfather-in-chief, Hun Sen, flew to Beijing the very next day and came clean to Xi face-to-face at the Great Hall of the People, reportedly handing over the books. And Xi rushed to offer Trump what amounted to a letter of allegiance, publicly pledging to swiftly and thoroughly clean up Southeast Asian scam crime. That was the signal he sent to the world at the time, trying to buy himself some goodwill and some time from Washington. But the story doesn't end there. At this exact moment, Xi's own grip on power isn't steady either. Party elders are now zeroing in on Public Security Minister Wang Xiaohong, and pressure from the Central Discipline Inspection Commission has already reached the top of his head. The goal is straightforward: to stop Xi from getting another term at the 21st Party Congress. And the political patron behind Sichuan and Chongqing police on this Southeast Asian black line was always Wang Xiaohong's own network. Except now, that patron can't even protect himself. Zhang Anjiang, Huang Ruixiu, these two simply knew too much. Both provincial police chiefs became the most dangerous living witnesses out there. So against that backdrop, Zhang jumped in May, Huang died in July, two deaths that look like separate tragedies on the surface, but underneath, they're really the same political survival operation, because dead men don't talk. Their deaths are exactly what's blocking the investigation's blade at Wang Xiaohong's level, buying him a little room to breathe. This is literally paying for a political firewall with human lives.
Why is it Chongqing and Sichuan police, though? I mean, you've got Yunnan and Guangxi. Those provinces sit so much closer geographically, don't they? So why does it end up being Sichuan and Chongqing? Walk us through why that is.
Honestly, this whole arrangement traces back decades, a geographic division of labour left over from history that's carried straight through to today. Back when the Liu Bochengdeng Xiaoping armies took the southwest Bureau ended up governing Yunnan, Guizhou, Sichuan and Tibet. When the Kunming military region was set up on its own, it mainly handled administration and intelligence. Everything else in that region fell under the Southwest Bureau's turf. So decade after decade, it's been passed down generation after generation, and today it's still mostly the Sichuan-Chongqing crowd running it, both sides.
Right. That historical momentum has carried straight through to today, and I think that's exactly why it's Chongqing and Sichuan.
And it's still expanding.
So, after Myanmar and Thailand, Laos and Cambodia got folded into that same Southwest Bureau sphere of influence as well. And Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia. I know those all originally belonged to a different system, the Central South Bureau's turf. Of course, in today's actual operations, it's nowhere near as neatly divided as chalk lines on a map anymore. These different networks cross and overlap constantly, and there's a lot of territory involved. I'm talking about overseas operations here. But at the root of it, when you ask who's closest to Laos, Thailand, Myanmar and Cambodia, who has the deepest resources on the ground there, the answer every single time is Sichuan and Chongqing police. Isn't that right?
Right, exactly. And it's precisely because that historical thread never broke that Zhang Anjiang was still playing the role of the Southwest Bureau's point man right up until the day he died. In fact, just 20 days before his death, he personally received, in the name of the Chongqing police, the Southeast Asian delegation to the Lancang Mekong Law Enforcement and Security Cooperation Center. That mechanism, put simply, is the core platform linking the police systems of 6 countries: China, Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia and Vietnam. And its agenda was exactly this: cross-border scam operations, online gambling, money laundering. That's what he was personally overseeing. In other words, Zhang Anjiang sat right at the intelligence core where this inherited, decades-old Southwest Bureau channel touches Southeast Asia's scam industry. And just 8 days after he received that delegation, the US Department of Justice announced sweeping financial restrictions and criminal action against this Myanmar-Cambodia scam network, seizing a huge number of websites and recruitment platforms. Barely 2 weeks after that, Zhang Anjiang fell to his death. What Zhang held in his hands was precisely the key to decades of Southwest Bureau intelligence control over Southeast Asia. And on the other end, the Americans were digging out the secrets of that pipeline inch by inch. It's hard to look at that timeline and not see a connection.
Right, and that actually lines up with something I saw with my own eyes. Back when I was in Yunnan doing some business deals on behalf of friends, I got to know quite a few people who'd come over from Thailand and from Myanmar. Local governments, even provincial governments, wouldn't dare lay a finger on these guys. They kept guns in their homes, and soldiers were constantly coming and going to see them. At the time, we all wondered, how is this one guy so powerful? It turned out he was the one actually dealing directly with all these local armed factions that control territory across Myanmar. So he wasn't someone a provincial government or even a provincial public security department could ever hope to control. That's genuinely, seriously formidable. Wouldn't you agree?
Right. Honestly, this Myanmar scam compound business has deep, long-standing ties to the CCP. Get into the history, and it's a long story. So let's start with one key figure, Peng Jiasheng. With Beijing's support and guidance, he ruled as the king of Kokang for nearly 20 years. Peng had 4 generals under him, and those deputies eventually turned on him. That's how you get the infamous 4 great families of Kokang, the Bai, the Wei, the Liu, and later the rising Ming family. They turned Kokang's old town into a massive scam base. They provided the land, the armed protection, recruited investors to move in, and forced trafficked Chinese workers into running scams. Anyone who missed quota got beaten, abused, even killed. The overwhelming majority of victims were Chinese citizens, and the money involved routinely ran into the billions. Here's an interesting detail, though. For these 4 families to turn scamming into an industrial-scale operation, they needed telecom infrastructure behind them, which means you'd have to say very close ties to the CCP itself. Without that, how could they even operate? Whose technology is running underneath all this?
Their SIM cards, their phone numbers, even their IP addresses. Every bit of it comes straight from China Telecom.
The CCP has long kept a deliberately vague stance on border management here. You could call it an extended buffer zone, or, like you said, a colony of sorts. The turning point came in October 2023. 4 undercover CCP police officers were killed by these compound militias. That directly enraged Beijing. A week later, in November, the Kokang Alliance Democratic Army, under Peng Deren, Peng Jiasheng's son, launched a massive offensive. Peng Deren had started with barely 200 men fighting a guerrilla war in the mountains. His forces quickly swelled past 2,000. This offensive, later known as Operation 1027, got strong backing from Beijing. Diplomatic pressure, intelligence cooperation, and quiet logistical approval, all 3 at once. And the 4 great families collapsed in short order. The scam empire the 4 families spent over a decade building was finished right there in Kokang. But the scam business itself didn't disappear. It just moved. So from 2024 onward, Myanmar's scam operations clearly shifted to the Mayawadi area. The Prince Group, founded by the Fujian native Chen Ji, played a major role in this new wave. Chen's network had started out in Cambodia, then expanded into Myanmar's Mayawadi. He's accused of directly or extensively participating in several major scam hubs, including the KK Park compound. This continued until October 2025, when the US Department of Justice indicted Chen Ji, designating the transnational criminal organization he led, and seizing over $14 billion in Bitcoin. The UK imposed matching sanctions. In 2026, Chen Ji was extradited back to China, though I wouldn't call it extradition. I'd call it being taken back into protective custody.
That's called protective custody.
Right. Protective custody, precisely. Now, here's what's worth noting. After Kokang was cleaned out, the CCP's grip on northern Myanmar's scam industry actually got tighter, not looser. By backing Peng Deren's alliance army, these scam compounds went from being run by proxy family militias for the military junta to something more direct, a grey network under Beijing's direct control.
I know that back in the day, this was all Communist Party of Burma territory, what you're calling Karen State, Wa State and Kokang. What is all this really? It's all old Communist Party of Burma turf. And back then, the CPB was really just a Maoist guerrilla force out in the field run by the CCP from behind the scenes, wasn't it? That territory was always under Chinese control, essentially, you know.
Kokang, Wa State, all these places used to be Communist Party of Burma country. At that stage, objectively, the CPB was acting as the CCP's proxy in northern Myanmar. But everything changed by the late 1980s, because with Deng Xiaoping's era came reform and opening up, and China's foreign policy shifted. So in 1988, when Myanmar saw a massive pro-democracy uprising and the military junta took power, the CCP quickly normalized relations with Myanmar's military government and cut off its open support for the Communist Party of Burma. Once it lost its main patron, internal conflict within the CPB exploded. So by 1989, senior commanders like Peng Jiasheng and Bao Yuxiang broke away from the party, and it splintered into separate, self-governing special region factions. As an organization, the CPB became a shell from that point on.
So, Ms. Guo, you're saying Chongqing and Sichuan police handle matters in both Thailand and Myanmar, and also in Laos and Cambodia. What's the actual evidence for that? That Chinese police are really working hand in hand with them on the ground?
Lanchang Mekong is actually one single river. In Yunnan, that stretch is called the Lanchang River. Once it leaves China, it's renamed the Mekong. It flows south through Myanmar, Laos and Thailand and finally crosses into Cambodia.
So now there's a CCP-led body called the Lancang Mekong Joint Law Enforcement and Security Cooperation Center, formally set up in December 2017 in Kunming, Yunnan province. From 2017, just think about it, to 2026, that's exactly 10 years. And what exactly were those 10 years? They were precisely the decade when scam compounds in Myanmar and Cambodia exploded in growth. And also, not coincidentally, the worst decade on record for human trafficking, forced organ harvesting and international money laundering targeting Chinese citizens. Everyone's heard of Mayawadi, the KK1 compound, built right along the Mekong River. And those patrol boats you see on the Mekong, those are Chinese patrol boats. So everyone needs to be very clear-eyed about what this relationship actually is, what it really means underneath the surface.
Right, and that's purely geography, and this river happens to flow out of Yunnan. But the real control, decades of inherited intelligence networks, personal connections and underworld ties across Myanmar, Thailand, Laos and Cambodia, that whole legacy sits in the hands of Chongqing and Sichuan police, not Yunnan. So Yunnan just provides the location and the channel. Chongqing and Sichuan provide the decades worth of people and leads the CCP has built up over time. That's the real thread running through all of this. The man Zhang Anjiang received right before his death was none other than the foreign head of this Lancang Mekong Law Enforcement and Security Cooperation Center, a major foreign delegation figure. And that VIP didn't travel all that way for some ceremonial meeting in Yunnan. He came specifically to sit down with the man who actually held the power, who controlled the intelligence and the money flows, Zhang Anjiang, the Chongqing police chief at the time. Like I said, just 20 days after that meeting, the US came down hard on this Myanmar-Cambodia scam network. 2 weeks after that, he was dead. So you can see exactly how much weight Chongqing police actually carry on this whole line.
Okay, you've laid that out really clearly. So, second question, how did this whole Southeast Asia operation get so tangled up with the United States in the first place?
Let's talk about what actually pulled America into this whole game. Originally, these compounds ran on pig butchering scams. The knife was aimed inward at Chinese civilians, overseas Chinese, cut down crop after crop because, well, English wasn't their strong suit, so it was all overseas Chinese victims. But once the pandemic hit and cross-border travel shut down, the raw material for these gangs, Chinese people who'd been lured in, willingly or half-willingly, that supply dried up. So they turned their whole target completely toward the sheep shearing scam, specifically hunting wealthy Western victims, Americans, Europeans. And to put the shift bluntly in one sentence, scamming your own people is high risk, low reward. Scamming foreigners is low risk, high reward. Chinese police cracked down hard on the former and turned a blind eye to the latter. This industry upgrade pointed the blade directly at Americans. At first, the Americans were slow to catch on. It wasn't until 2024, 2025, when the losses piled up to over $10 billion a year, that this stopped being treated as an ordinary criminal matter and instead became, for the US, a national security issue. America brought out its two sharpest blades, high-tech big data tracking and the dollar clearing system. The moment dirty money passes through dollar settlement, no matter how many turns it takes, how many shell identities it passes through, American investigators can follow the trail and piece the entire money chain back together. And what they pieced together went far beyond a handful of individual scammers. What the Americans uncovered was a laundering pipeline running straight from Southeast Asia's scam compounds into China's police system and up into more senior officials. And standing right at the center of that pipeline, of course, is Public Security Minister Wang Xiaohong. On top of that, add Wenzhou Capital. Wenzhou Money has for years been one of the most important financiers behind Southeast Asian gambling and underground banking. Two threads, one visible, one hidden, woven together. And that's exactly what's let this whole black money system run so smoothly, so undisturbed for so many years in Southeast Asia. It's Chongqing and Sichuan police acting as the two official umbrellas standing guard for this entire industry, if you will.
Standing guard, right.
And that's exactly why, once the Americans showed up with ironclad evidence and started applying pressure, Cambodia couldn't sit still anymore. The Prince Group and the Huayoni Group, one running the money-making side, one running the laundering side, got pulled up by the roots by the Americans. And that pushed Hun Sen's own family power base into a corner. He had no choice but to fly to Beijing in person to beg Xi Jinping for help. And Xi, fully aware of just how deep this whole supply chain runs, could only grit his teeth and, in front of the entire world, put on a show with Hun Sen about jointly cracking down on this scam industry. In reality, he's buying breathing room for himself, for Wang Xiaohong, and for this entire black money system.
So what about Fujian's police then? What exactly is their connection to all of this?
Right, and this brings us to the fifth question, which actually completes the last piece of this whole puzzle. Everything we've talked about so far is the Chongqing Sichuan line, the old legacy handed down from the Southwest Bureau, covering Myanmar, Thailand, Laos and Cambodia. But Fujian's police force runs a completely different route. It's the traditional operation across the strait in the Philippines.
Because a lot of Filipinos have Fujian and Cantonese roots.
Right. Fujian sits right on the coast, so doing business with the Philippines, and underground banking, Chinese clan associations, all of that, goes back centuries. That historical foundation naturally overlaps with the Fujian faction's power inside the police system. But here's the key thing. You can't cleanly separate these different lines because money moves and people move too. On the surface, something looks like a Southwest Bureau matter, but pull the thread and it loops right back to Fujian. And it works the other way around too, which tells you this isn't a handful of local police forces each running their own separate turf. It's one single network, crossing and supporting each other, all interconnected.
I know exactly why Fujian's police force has to stand out so carefully in this network. The key, of course, is Wang Xiaohong. He's the #1 figure Fujian police produced over decades of hard work, and he's currently the single most important figure in the Fujian faction. He rose all the way from grassroots policing to Minister of Public Security. He himself is the top banner of the Fujian faction, and precisely because he's at the helm, the Fujian line has naturally become the main force within this entire Southeast Asian black money system. Together, these networks are propping up cross-border scam money laundering on an absolutely massive scale, aren't they? So you're saying this time Chongqing Police Chief Zhang Anjiang and Sichuan Department Head Huang Ruixue are both without question tied to this whole Southeast Asia affair?
Exactly right. However you trace it, this whole thread loops back to Wang Xiaohong. Line up Fujian, Chongqing and Sichuan together, and you realize this isn't a scattering of unrelated local corruption cases at all. It's one entire national black money network, built on the police system as its skeleton, organized along historical geographic lines, all quietly cooperating with each other. And the top thread tying this whole net together runs straight to Wang Xiaohong. That's exactly why this round of American maximum pressure and this internal purge by party elders against Wang has spread so wide and dug so deep. Because in the end, what they're really digging up isn't some provincial police chief, it's the power structure of whoever's actually running the whole system behind the scenes. Think about it, whether it's Zhang Anjiang or Huang Ruixue, whether officially ruled suicide or murder, at bottom it's the exact same thing, using human lives to stop this investigation halfway up the mountain to keep it from climbing any higher. Once someone's dead, their testimony dies with them. What Americans care about is the losses to American citizens, the safety of the dollar financial system. What's really keeping Beijing up at night is a completely different ledger. The massive sums of domestic Chinese money that have quietly been flowing out of the country through this Southeast Asian channel year after year. Beijing has to get a full account of that money or this whole system will get hollowed out from within by this black market supply chain. So what's truly terrifying, Zhongnanhai runs even deeper than that. A strategic risk. These Southeast Asian countries, Myanmar especially, have spent years being fed by scam money and online gambling. And that black money has let them build their own armed forces, their own territory, their own revenue base, effectively becoming a state within a state. If these local warlords already have guns, money and territory, that's bad enough for their neighbours. But if one of these states within a state ever gets secretly co-opted and actually controlled by some political faction or some individual inside China, that stops being a matter of public order. It becomes a matter of security at the very core of power in Zhongnanhai. It would mean China had effectively grown on foreign soil a private army and a private treasury, answering to no one but some individual or some faction completely outside the party central's control.
There's an inspector in Jiangsu province, someone from the Discipline Inspection Commission, who's reportedly had his entire family wiped out, rumour has it, by hired killers brought in from Southeast Asia. And there's talk that Zhang Yuxia and Liu Zhengli were arrested not by the armed police, but by private armed forces hired from Southeast Asia, among other things. So, with all of this, Huang Ruixue, Zhang Anjiang, whoever, whether their deaths were personal choices or a political purge, whether it was suicide or being made to look like suicide, whether someone deliberately tried to cut off the thread of the investigation, honestly, there's no public evidence for any of it. We don't know. Dead men don't talk, after all. But whoever's really behind the scenes is definitely still out there, still hiding. All right, that's about all we have time for today. Thank you so much to both of our guests, and thanks to everyone watching. We'll keep chasing this thread bit by bit going forward. See you next time.